Hello friends, welcome back to Heartscape's Urban Homestead, where we're growing gardens and community to live lives that are rooted, spacious, connected, and to remember ourselves along the way. My name is Michaela, welcome back to the homestead. We're in a space today that you probably haven't seen yet on this channel, but if you watch any of my videos over on my other channel, Heartscape's Reiki, you've seen this space a lot because this is my Reiki studio where I do my work with clients and with classes. Got my massage table back there, my online classroom space is over in the corner there, and over here is our central focus altar area where we orient when we're doing classes. And I'm up here today firstly, because it's just the right space to have the chat with you today that I want to have, and because I love opportunities to blend these two sides of myself. As I've mentioned in many other videos, for me, gardening and meditation and spiritual practice are truly one and the same. I divide them into two channels for, content consistency, but truly they are blended in my life and in my heart. And so I love an opportunity to invite you in to the other space. And because it gives me the opportunity to just kind of sit down for a chat with you about something that's been on my mind and hopefully that you'll find valuable. When we take on a lifestyle, particularly one that was not the one that we were raised in, we need to be well-informed, well-educated. We need to have a lot of reliable, consistent, quality resources to help us to, build that life, to engage the skills and knowledge and, shift in new directions in ways that are effective. And a lot of times that takes the form of books. However, of course, in recent years, that also takes the form of online spaces more and more often, such as this YouTube channel. And that is a good thing. Having access to tons and tons and tons of information is incredibly valuable. However, we do run into some challenges when we rely primarily on online sources for our information. And that's become particularly true as we step into the wild frontier of AI content generation. Because we can't always know with as much certainty as before if a source of information is reliable or not. My favorite YouTube channel, as I've mentioned before, is Roots and Refuge Farm with Jessica Sowards. And Jessica made a video a couple weeks ago talking about this very thing and about her experiences of running into content in the form of blogs, even books self-published on Amazon that were written entirely by AI. And the information in those resources were not accurate, were not good information. She tells the story of following a recipe that she found on a blog that totally failed because the AI had just not quite gotten it right and was pretending to be a person who had tried this recipe many times. And so, that's kind of a funny example, but when we think about, investing our time, our heart, our money, our resources, the lives of the animals and plants that we steward when we take on a homesteading life, the consequences of following bad advice or inaccurate information can grow quite a bit. And so Jessica put out an invitation to those of us who like to share content on the interwebs to share our tried and true, effective, quality, reliable resources that we have used to build our homesteading lifestyle. And you know what? I don't need a second invitation to sit down and talk about books. It's one of my favorite things. In fact, I have a couple of videos over on the Reiki channel doing exactly that with the resources I use in that realm. And so I'm really glad to get a chance to sit down and talk to you about homesteading resources, specifically for the urban homesteader, specifically for the urban homesteader who approaches this lifestyle from a heart and spirit perspective. And so today, the altar space here in the studio is absolutely filled with books that we are going to sit down and chat about. And we're actually going to do that over two videos because as much as I tried to pull just a tiny handful of books, a tiny sampling of my collection of books from the bookshelves, there's a lot of books here. It's going to take more than one video to talk to you about them all. And this is just a tiny little piece of the books that I've been using for many, many years to walk this path. So let me just show you an overview here. I'll talk to you about how I've organized this conversation, and then we'll jump right into it. Okay, so we have the teaching altar, and we have the book collection. So, like I said, this is just a tiny sampling of all that I could be discussing. But I chose these books according to some particular criteria. But let me just first tell you the categories that we have here. So we begin with kind of books of inspiration around the lifestyle of urban homesteading, then getting into some of the how-tos of that lifestyle. Jumping over here to the special category of beekeeping. Up around top, we have well, maybe not surprisingly, the most books I have in my collection are actually about medicinal herbs and growing and using them. So that entire top layer is medicinal herbs. And then special mention for the books written by the aforementioned Jessica Sowards. She's written 2 books on gardening and homesteading, and we will talk about those as well. So the criteria that I use to choose which of my many books I would share with you. Firstly, that they be a book that I have read at least most of, or a significant part of. Yes, there is certainly a good deal of books on the shelf that I have not actually read. You know, buying and collecting and owning books is a completely different hobby from reading books. I stand by that. It has to be a book that I've read, at least a good percentage of, that I have found real value in, that I found the information to be valuable and useful, and that I have applied that value specifically in some way in my homesteading journey at some point successfully. So in other words, it has to not only be interesting, but it has to have actually resulted in value added to my lifestyle, to my homestead. And from there, one of the things that was interesting to note is that in all of the categories that I just mentioned, there is this blending of books that are focused primarily on inspiration, books that are focused primarily on skills building, and those that are focused primarily on the blending of those things and our spiritual life. Not surprising. Perhaps that is, in fact, the intersection that I tend to operate on. But I did want to include books from all of those categories because that really is what has had the most heart and meaning for me. Okay, enough talking. Let us jump right in. So I think for this first video, I'm going to focus on the bottom row of that I-shaped pile of books. And that begins with books of inspiration. So my journey with gardening and with homesteading came right alongside my journey with political activism. I'll tell that story in another video, hopefully coming up pretty soon. But I really came to the garden and to this lifestyle out of a desire to live my life in a way that actually impacted positive change in the world. I was doing that in many areas of my life, but most of those areas, the ones that were more overtly in the realm of political activism and organizing, were ones that, quite honestly, took quite a toll on me. There was a lot of stress involved, a lot of, pushing against problems, which is incredibly important and amazing work. Part of why I do the work that I do now around meditation, teaching, and spiritual practice is to support those who are in the trenches of that kind of work to be resilient, to find their center, and to be able to be in the work that they're called to. For me, though, I needed an aspect of my life that was also focused on bettering the world from my own sphere of influence, my own family. And that was nourishing, was life-giving, that really was putting my hands to something that felt generative rather than reactive. And so alongside of that, when I first started gardening, started reading a lot of books that really did highlight the political nature of food and food production and food growing, and in particular that highlighted the ways in which marginalized populations have been in relationship to the land in ways that are very beautiful and generative, and also that are tied up in oppression. And those books were really important to help transition my mindset from, again, this very overtly politically active way of living my life and doing my job, towards the way that I am living it now, which is really generative from the inside out. But those perspectives still are really important to me, and I still go back into those books and those resources and documentaries and other forms of connection, community engaged work here in my community around issues of food justice. And so I just wanted to highlight two books that have been really meaningful to me over those years. The first is this one here, Cultivating Food Justice, Race, Class, and Sustainability. This is by Allison Hope Alcon and Julian Aguiman. And this is, truly it is a political book. It's written from a kind of academic perspective and surveying the connections between sustainability and marginalization, looking at it from a wide range of perspectives, in particular the ways in which kind of traditional modern environmental movements have in some ways actually cultivated a fair amount of racism and oppressive structures inside of the ways in which they operate, and how we can do that differently, how we can actually look to the leadership of Indigenous people, of people of color, of marginalized communities that are the ones taking the brunt of environmental injustice, and the ways in which they have been finding solutions all along that deserve our attention. And so, very inspiring book. In the realm of education, community building, and politics. Not an instructional manual for homesteading, but one that has been part of my inspiration for living this life for a long time. Related to that book, the book Rooted in the Earth by Diane Glave, Reclaiming the African American Environmental Heritage. This is a beautiful book that tells personal stories, family stories, and also from the perspective of a doctor, from the perspective of a professor. Diane Glave is a professor at Morehouse University, and really, diving into the reclamation of African American heritage and the land, that looks at the connections between that heritage and slavery, the obvious connections there, but goes well beyond that and looks at the healing that comes to African American communities when they reconnect themselves to the land. Also in this category is a book that I don't have up here because I gifted it to somebody recently, but a dear friend of mine who has been my friend for a long time in the context of this kind of work, Rue Mapp. She's the founder of Outdoor Afro, which is an organization that reconnects Black people to the land, largely in the form of engaging with nature recreationally, but also includes farming and homesteading and hunting and all of the things. Her new book called Nature Swagger just came out recently, and is also very story-based and inspirational-based around the reconnection of African Americans to the land. So I'm going to put links to all of the books that we talk about down below, so you'll have connections to those as well, even though I don't actually have the book here, because some books I just can't help but keep giving away to people, right? It's probably part of how we know it's a good book. Okay. So continuing in the realm of inspiration and starting to step into the realm of education as far as how to do the homesteading farming lifestyle, we have this book, Pharmacology, by Daphne Miller. And Daphne is a reporter and a writer, and she went to visit a wide range of different types of farms, everything from sustainable cattle ranches to a vineyard and winemakers in Sonoma County, to egg and poultry farmers, to vegetable farmers, just a wide range of types of farms, and telling the stories of those farms specifically through the lens of how the way that we treat the earth in our food making endeavors is reflective of the ways that we treat our own health and our own bodies. And so it's really explicitly making that connection between the way we treat the earth and the way we treat our bodies. And that farming and engaging in food production in ways that are sustainable and loving to the earth, biodynamic ways, tends to reflect in the way that we treat ourselves and our bodies. And I have definitely found that to be true in my own personal life and observing that in my communities. And, following a journey like that through the lens of storytelling is always a really powerful way to bring that message home. So I very much appreciate that book. But the very first book of this kind, of telling the story of coming into alignment with the land in ways that are generative and beautiful and loving of both the land and our own health and family and bodies, came to me with this book here, Animal Vegetable Miracle by Barbara Kingsolver. Barbara Kingsolver has been my favorite author forever, since I was a teenager. She's a novelist, an essayist, a poet, and occasionally will write a nonfiction story like this one. And this book, Animal Vegetable Miracle, tracks her family's foray into shifting to a local food resourcing lifestyle. Starting with their move from Tucson, Arizona to their family land in, I believe, Kentucky, in the Appalachian Mountains, and documenting a full year of doing their very best to source all of their food from their own tiny little farm and their local community. And along the way, giving a lot of education in how to do that, along with inspiration on why you might want to do that. Barbara Kingsolver is an amazing storyteller, a brilliant author. And, from my perspective as a 20-something-year-old political activist with a baby in a tiny urban apartment who was just really beginning to feel the anxiety of not being able to live my life in alignment with my values with regard to health and food and the land. This was it was like a salve, it was like medicine to my soul, because not only does she talk very honestly and realistically about the challenges and the joys of attempting this, but she also talks about it from a lot of different perspectives. So, understanding that not everyone can pick up and move to a family farm in the country. She talks about all of the different categories of homesteading that are covered in this book, which is extensive, with modifications for people who live in the city, who live in apartments, which I did at the time, who live, in smaller pieces of land on larger pieces of land. So it helps to contextualize it for different types of lifestyle. And I really needed that at the time. I mean, I still need that. I think we all, there's this balance between accessing resources that show us a life that we long for in its fullness, in its complete form, right? Its ideal form perhaps, but not ideal as far as covering over the difficulties, but just in its fully fleshed out form, right? And being inspired by that. But there can be a point where it becomes frustrating, particularly if we just feel or believe or know that we can never achieve that full expression of whatever it is that we're longing for. I myself don't have any particular, not really the ambition or the belief that I could go move to a farm, like go get a big piece of land somewhere and move to a farm. A lot of things would have to be different about my life. But I very much want to be as sustainable as I can here in my town. So I really appreciate resources like Animal Vegetable Miracle that show us both sides of that alongside each other, right? The really inspiring, fleshed out version, and the here's how you can have a piece of this that is meaningful to you wherever you are. And so that was really powerful. But even more powerful, perhaps, was getting to read a very similar kind of story, a story, right? A real life story of somebody's journey into sustainable living who was living a lifestyle much like my own. And that came in the form of two resources. The first one I read when I was living in the Bay Area in that apartment. And it was written by a woman named Novella Carpenter, and the book is called Farm City. And she is from Oakland, which is the town next to where I grew up that I worked in. My job was in Oakland for about 15 years. So, very much part of my home. And Novella Carpenter lived in a tiny apartment in Oakland with an abandoned lot across the road. And she turned that abandoned lot into a community farm and raised bees on the balcony of her apartment and raised a couple of pigs over in the lot and all kinds of other shenanigans, and wrote about it in a really hilarious but also incredibly educational way. I learned a ton from that book on how to adapt apartment living to homestead living. So a very direct one-to-one correlation between what she did there in Oakland and what I was attempting to do in my apartment just 2 towns over. I also do not have that book here because I also have gifted that book, my most recent copy of it. And so I don't have it here, but the book is called Farm City by Novella Carpenter. Again, really beautiful blend of inspiration and education specifically geared for the urban homesteader. I just love having resources that are geared for us, the urban homesteaders. There's a lot of resources out there for people who are doing this on land, in a more traditional homestead space, but I love those that are geared for we, the urban homesteaders. So similar to that is this book, Quarter Acre Farm. And this book by Spring Warren actually was written here in the town I am now living in. So I kind of love the symmetry of that. Farm City was written in and about the town that I moved from, and Quarter Acre Farm was written in and about the town that I now live in, Davis, California. And so literally the same sort of dynamic that I have is what Spring Warren has in her kind of urban suburban little lot in Davis, California. So same kind of structure, telling her story. I love the little description here on the back. When Spring Warren told her husband and sons that she wanted to grow 75% of all their food that they consumed for 1 year, and she wanted to do it in their yard, they told her she was crazy. She did it anyway. So I love the tenacity of that. So it tells the story of that transition from a lawn to a little tiny farm on a suburban lot, and does it with quite a bit of wit and humor and a lot of education. So I learned a lot, not only about how to garden and homestead on this scale in this kind of place, but literally in the landscape, the climate that I'm in now. The climate in the Bay Area where I moved from, it's only an hour and a half away. Incredibly different climate. It's a coastal space. This is now an inland valley. Very different climate. And that was a huge challenge for me in transitioning my homestead here. And it was really helpful to read about Spring Warren's transition to farming here in this area. So beautiful resource there. And then this is one of the first books that I bought when I started living this lifestyle. It's simply called The Urban Homestead by Kelly Coyne and Eric Knutson. And this really is going specifically into the realm of like a how-to book. So this is just chock full of strategies and systems and tools and ways of thinking, mindsets, for living an urban homesteading life in a real how-to kind of way across many different realms, from the biology of gardening, but more so the technology of gardening, right? How to build things, how to resource materials in an urban landscape, how to adapt to a small space, things around food preservation, around carpentry, around storage, just endless resources for how to live this lifestyle. So very much a how-to, not telling stories as much as telling you how to do it. Super valuable resource. I've been using this book literally for like 25 years, probably more. Very good resource, The Urban Homestead. And then the last book that I pulled out for this category, again, I could have brought a bunch more in, but we have to stop at some point. But again, knowing that, you know, resources can be generalized, that can give us general information, but the more specific to our situation it is, of course, the more explicit value it can have for us. And so, as I mentioned, gardening in Central California was a major challenge for me. This is a Mediterranean and semi-desert region, a flat, very hot valley. And coming from the coast, even though it was still California, I really struggled to understand this landscape. And so having books like this, The Drought-Defying California Garden, has been invaluable to me. So really recommend for any of you, you know, gardening or doing anything like this that is impacted by the climate, or anything else about your region, to have resources that are specific to your region, that talk about, you know, the type of plants, the type of structures, the type of considerations, the type of weather, how the seasonal cycle operates in your region where you are. Incredibly valuable. I literally gave up gardening for the first few years after moving here, because I was so dumbfounded by how to adjust to such a different climate. It was very frustrating. It was very challenging. There's a lot of other reasons going on in my life why I kind of backed off from gardening at that time, but certainly just not understanding the landscape was a big one. And so when I turned back towards it, I really started to focus on building resources for understanding my landscape, and this was one of them. So there's a lot of books like this. This is just one of them. I have definitely used it. I wouldn't say it's like one that I've used a ton, but it's just kind of more giving this example of having a resource that's very specific to your region. So The Drought-Defying California Garden. And this one was recommended by a landscaper who specifically, you know, works in the realm of California drought-resistant landscaping. So I trusted that resource. Okay, so the last two books we're going to talk about in this category are the ones written by Jessica Sowards, The First Time Gardener and The First Time Homesteader. And so kind of unlike the ones that I just talked about, Jessica lives in a very different landscape than I do. She lives in South Carolina, where she wrote The First Time Homesteader, and she was living in Arkansas when she wrote The First Time Gardener. So very different landscapes. But both of these give really good general overviews to how to think about gardening and homesteading, with some specifics, you know, that are relevant to her region, but really more speaking more generally to any gardener in any area. Of the two, the one that's like the most directly applicable to me as an urban homesteader is The First Time Gardener, Growing Vegetables. All the know-how and encouragement you need to grow and fall in love with your brand new food garden. Jessica is just incredibly inspirational, so positive, so fun to read and to be with, and incredibly knowledgeable after 10 years of building this lifestyle. And The First Time Gardener is, as the name implies, written specifically to the first-time gardener, but even as somebody who had been gardening for 20 years by the time I picked up this book, there was quite a bit to learn from it as well. So I think it's a resource that is valuable across the spectrum, and yeah, just really goes into a lot of detail about kind of the full range of general categories around gardening. And that's helpful to know that it's kind of a generalized resource. It's not going really, really deep in depth to any particular topic, but is covering a lot of different topics. Similarly, The First Time Homesteader kind of takes that same approach to the homesteading lifestyle. This one is really geared for folks who have land, who are on a larger scale than I am. So less in this one that's directly applicable to the urban homesteader. However, still quite a bit that is valuable, because I do raise chickens and rabbits, and I have dabbled in quail, and I have my garden, and I have to build things. And so, you know, I'm having to do more translation for my scale, but there's still an incredible amount of value in this. And I just am interested in these things. Even though I can't imagine I'll ever own a dairy cow, it's still interesting to me to know how to work with a dairy cow, even if that's not something that I personally aspire to. So very good resources. Both of these were released within the last 3 years. I think First Time Gardener was put out 3 years ago, and First Time Homesteader just came out, I think, last year. So very recent additions to the homesteading book landscape. Okay, I think with that, we will move on to our last category for this video. So that category is beekeeping. Natural beekeeping is one of the topics that I talk about on this channel specifically. It is one that I am very much a novice at, very much a beginner, a very passionate beginner in beekeeping, specifically from the perspective of natural beekeeping and treatment-free beekeeping. I have told this story in other videos, but just in brief, I started beekeeping with a beekeeping mentor about 4 years ago, and kind of learning the conventional modern beekeeping methods, and pretty quickly kind of fell out of love with them, realizing that to keep bees in that way basically requires us to be routinely dosing them with pesticides, keeping them in homes that are not well suited to their lifestyle, and that require an incredible amount of maintenance from the beekeeper. And you know what? I just ain't got time for all that. Truly, I'm a lazy beekeeper. I don't do well with having to kind of open up the hive and tear it all apart every couple of weeks. Not only does that not work well with my schedule, but it also just hurts my heart every time I have to pull their home entirely apart to do an inspection. It just seems like it does more damage than good. And so I was pretty much ready to give up beekeeping. I had given up. I had lost my hive over the winter a couple of winters ago, and just decided I wasn't going to re-enter it. And then I was in Portland, Oregon with my daughter in the famous Powell bookstore, and just kind of went on a intuitive journey through the catacombs of this enormous bookstore. Truly, it is a wonder to behold. If you're ever in Portland, you got to go to Powell Books. And I found myself in the basement back corner of this bookstore where the beekeeping books were. And pretty much just like a radar, like a bee to a flower, I went directly to this book called What Bees Want by Susan. I just realized I am not entirely sure how to pronounce her last name. Knilans. Nilans? Susan Nilans and Jacqueline Friedman. What Bees Want, Beekeeping as Nature Intended. And this outlines the how, the what, and the why, in particular the why of why you would keep bees in a natural way. And that this is really hearkening back to the way in which beekeeping had been done forever and ever until the modern times. And while still acknowledging the pressures that are existing now in modern beekeeping that did not exist traditionally, in particular the varroa mite, which came in from Asia. Honeybees are from Europe. Here they are all over the world. And, it's caused some interesting challenges for keeping bees healthy. But there's a very strong case to be made that the way in which we keep bees as healthy as possible and actually strengthen their ability to resist varroa mites and the diseases that they bring in the long term, over the long haul, for generations to come, is by allowing natural selection and by keeping bees in a way that is well aligned to what they need, their lifestyle, as opposed to our needs as humans who want honey. That those two things together are what's going to save the bees, what's going to make this an effective relationship moving forward. And I wholeheartedly agree with that perspective and have been working with that for the last year and a half. Very much experimentally, very much results are to be seen, but it really revolutionized my relationship with beekeeping and brought that passion and excitement back to the relationship with bees. And so this book, as I said, it goes over, a lot of the why you would want to do that, how you would go about doing that, and some of the specific what's, like what type of hive, what type of maintenance methodology, and so on is aligned with this lifestyle, and then resources for finding that equipment. So a little bit inspiration, a little bit how to, specifically around natural beekeeping. And I just devoured this book in a couple of days and use it regularly as a reference. The other side of that, also from Jacqueline Freeman, is this book, The Song of Increase. And this book is explicitly the spirituality of bees. This is not about how you keep bees or why you should keep bees or what kind of beehive to use. This is all about the spiritual relationship between the bee and the world, and between us and the bee. And it absolutely just touches my heart and my soul. Song of Increase, Listening to the Wisdom of Honeybees for Kinder Beekeeping and a Better World by Jacqueline Freeman. And so, again, balancing the how-to, the what, the how do you do it, with the why and the heart of why we would do it is really important to me. And so having these two books, side by side, has really worked well for me around this topic. And I love it when there's that balance. So I would definitely recommend these two books together, in particular, if the spirituality of life is something that matters to you. You get a little bit of that in here. It's definitely present, but it is explicitly in the Song of Increase. So then moving back over to the kind of the how and the what, beekeeping is very complex. There's a lot of different types of beehives, lots of different maintenance methodologies, lots, so much. There's so much. And most of what is out there is focused on conventional beekeeping. Like 99% of the resources that you can find around beekeeping will teach you all about mite maintenances and treatments and how to tear apart your hive and how to feed sugar water in the winter and all the things that I'm not wanting to do. And so I appreciate finding resources that focus in this other way. And so just two others here I wanted to share. Keeping Bees in Horizontal Hives, A Complete Guide to Apiculture, by George Lyons, who is a French beekeeper who's kind of one of the founders of the modern treatment-free beekeeping movement, you could say. And so his hive is called the Lyons hive. It's a style of hive that's not super popular, but it's definitely available. Like if you Googled it, you'd get a lot of results back. It's a particular type of horizontal hive as opposed to the stacked hives that are common in conventional beekeeping. The dimensions of it are a little different. It's very well insulated. It's got some aspects to it that are similar to conventional beehives, but also are different in the way in which they take into account some of the specific needs that bees have, like insulation, like a horizontal structure. So just a real how-to, step-by-step, detailed description of beekeeping generally, natural beekeeping generally, and then how to use this particular type of hive. I do not yet have a Lyons hive. It is on my wish list. There's a website that is run by the author of this book, Dr. Leo Sharashkin. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's Eastern European and really is the kind of, the person that is carrying on Lyons' legacy. And so he operates a website called horizontalhives.com. And in that, he gives away, I believe, for free building plans for Lyons hives of different varieties. So if you are carpentry savvy and have the types of tools that are needed for making precise cuts and various angles and, I don't know, building stuff with wood, that are precise, then you can, build them yourself, but you can also purchase them from his website. They are not inexpensive at all. And eventually I will get one, but I do not yet have one. In the meantime, I'm just learning about them and being excited about it. And then Dr. Leo's book, Keeping Bees with a Smile, Principles and Practice of Natural Beekeeping, similar type of material, as it says, the principles and practices of natural beekeeping. Definitely talks about lay-ins hives, but also goes into other forms of hives, particularly horizontal type. And just again, a modern take. The revised book by Lyons was written a while ago. I don't know when exactly, but it's an older book. So this one's just a newer take on similar material by someone who has studied this method. So they're related in that way. Both of them, a lot of really valuable information for those of us who want to explore the wild world of natural beekeeping. Okay, that is plenty for today's video. Gosh, I really am a nerd. I could just talk about books all day. Thank you if you've hung with me for this long. I know this is a long video. And the next one is also probably going to be a somewhat long video. We've got another swath of books to talk about. Probably not quite as long. These are the next round is, I think these are all explicitly books focused on herbal medicine and growing and using herbs. So a little bit more of a focus category. So keep an eye out for that second video. Once it is live, I'll put the link to it down below. And along with a bibliography, a list of all of the books that we have talked about here in this video. And I hope that you find them useful. I would love to know the resources that you have found most useful in your homesteading journey. Again, I think it's really essential to build that library, that collection of reliable resources, because this information is life-giving, right? I mean, many of us are building towards a life that we can be sufficient in our communities around the things that matter most. Home, hearth, community, food, and we need reliable information for that. And the internet isn't always the most reliable source and won't necessarily always be available to us. So we want to have hard copies of things. So please put your favorite resources down below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one where we talk about herbalism. Bye-bye.